But a stat that Drake May did break of Tom Brady's was the completion percentage in a single game. May's going 21 for 23 had a 91.3% completion percentage. That broke Tom Brady's franchise record of 88.5%. All right, welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Monday. I know it's late. Just got done watching all the Monday night football games. As far as for me, they didn't quite go the way I hoped, especially for fantasy purposes. Looked pretty good with Detroit, the way they started off, but then they kind of fizzled in the second half. As far as Goff, I needed him to do much better than he did, but that's a whole nother issue with my fantasy team. So what we're going to do today in this top 10s, we're going to go through different games, look at some of the players on those teams that had some significant top 10s for themselves. So we'll start with tonight's game between the Houston Texans and the Seahawks. Houston lost that game 27-19. Despite the defense actually playing pretty well considering the situations they found themselves in by the offense. The Houston offense is just horrible. I mean, the offensive line is anyway. Stroud is running around all the time trying to just run for his life, basically. But in the process of losing, it's not often that you lose when you cause the other team, so the Seahawks, to have 4 turnovers and you still lose the game. So as far as that goes, that's one of the first ones here. Derek Stingley, cornerback for Houston Texans, had an interception. He went into the season with 12. He's got 1. He's got 13 interceptions now, which is good enough to put him in the tie for 3rd all-time in Houston Texans NFL stats. So he's 3rd all-time. Only 2 players left, and number 1 is Jonathan Joseph with only 17. This is the fewest, I believe, any team has for most interceptions by a single player on a team. So now Stingley is tied with Dunta Robinson, who played from 2004 to 2009 with 13. So next up for him is Kareem Jackson, who had 16. So that might take him a while, but he has moved up to 3rd all time. Another player on Houston who had a good game was Will Anderson. He's been really good for this Houston's defense. He had a tackle for loss, which puts him at 33 now. 33 tackles for loss. He was in a tie for 9th with Jonathan Grenard, who was with the team back in 2023. He had 32, as did Will Anderson. One more gives him 33. So next up for Will Anderson is Benardrick McKinney, who played from 2015 to 2020. He had 35. So next up for him, and that's for 8th spot. So he's in the top 10 all time for the Houston Texans as far as tackles for loss. All right. Moving on to another game, that was Kansas City Chiefs over the hapless Raiders, 31-0. That game was atrocious. Despite that, Patrick Mahomes was sacked 1 time. And you wouldn't think that'd be much, and it's not much in the context of everything. But that 1 sack put him into a tie for 2nd all-time in sacks by a Kansas City quarterback. So now he has 195, which ties him with Bill Kenny, who played from 1980 to 1988. He also had 195 sacks. Now, Len Dawson has put this number out there quite a ways for Patrick Mahomes to catch. He probably never will. It's 372. Way back in the 60s and 70s, that's when Len Dawson played. So probably the only negative for the Kansas City Chiefs in that game was the 1 sack. And that's all he had. Patrick Mahomes had in the game was 1 sack for 4 yards. Otherwise, he had a really good game. All right, let's move on to the Eagles win over the Vikings, 28-22. Dallas Goedert, we'll start with him, tight end. In the game, he had 3 receptions for only 18 yards, but those 3 receptions gave him 376 receptions now. 76 receptions, which is good enough now to put him into 7th all by himself. He was tied with 373 with Pete Pijos, who played way back in 1947 to 1955. So now he's got 376. Next up for him, Deshaun Jackson, who played from 2008 to 2020. He had 379, so he only needs 3 more to move into 6th all time. Now, it's not going to be long on this team before you start seeing a couple of their other key wide receivers, especially Brown, and that'll happen more so in the yardage. So that was the one player for the Philadelphia Eagles to have a top 10 this weekend. Now, looking at the Patriots, Drake May was all over the place here. He's got all kinds of stats. Patriots beat the Titans 31-13. Drake May, 21 completions on 23 attempts, so only 2 incompletions, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Now, he was sacked 4 times, had a quarterback rating of 135.9. So the first stat for him is he had the 222 yards, which gives him now in his career with the Patriots 4,020 yards, which is good enough actually to be in 9th place. He passed Matt Cassell and Mike Taliaferro, both of them. Cassell played from 2005 to 2008, and Mike Taliaferro 1968 to 1970. They each had a little over 3,900. Now, Drake May has 4,020 to put him into 9th. Next up for him is Hugh Millen, who has 4,276. So he'll catch him this season. Number 7, though, is Mac Jones with over 8,900. So it's going to have to be next year before Drake May is passing anybody else in the top 10. Now, another category Drake May had was the 2 touchdown passes he had this weekend. Puts him at 27 touchdown passes in his career, which is good enough to tie him with Mike Taliaferro at 27. So he's tied with him. One more, he'll pass Mike Taliaferro, moving to 9th by himself. Next up is Butch Songen, who played back in 1960, early 60s. He had 36 touchdown passes. So he should catch him to get 8th spot. And then in 7th is Mac Jones again, who he'll be trying to catch. And he might catch him. He had 46. I don't know. He may not. He needs another 19 for that. It's a possibility. So he's in the top 10 in 2 categories already for the New England Patriots. The top dog there is Tom Brady, which is miles ahead of anybody else. But a stat that Drake May did break of Tom Brady's was the completion percentage in a single game. May's going 21 for 23, had a 91.3% completion percentage. That broke Tom Brady's franchise record of 88.5%, which he had set against the Jaguars back in 2009. So that is a record that he now holds on his own. Another record that he has that's interesting, it's a record, I guess you can say, because the only player who's ever done it in the Super Bowl era, is he completed 90% of his passes, threw for more than 200 yards, and rushed for more than 50 yards in a single game. He had 62 rushing yards in this game. That's something that no other player has ever done in the Super Bowl era. So it's an interesting stat, but it just shows how involved he is in the game and how complete he is. Already, in just his second year, he's really going to be one of the better quarterbacks. And then one last stat for him, he clipped 200 passing yards and finished with a passer rating over 100. And that's something that hasn't been done by too many quarterbacks. Only Patrick Mahomes and Dan Marino did it. And I guess this is a stat at age 23 or younger. That's the thing about it. So another stat for him. All right, so he's racking up some different kinds of stats. Been a good player. So the New England Patriots also had Ramondre Stevenson, running back, He had 18 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown. Now, interesting in this game, he had 70 something yards in the first half and kind of shut him down in the second half. But by then, the Patriots had this game kind of locked up. But with those 88 yards, he's now got 3,311 yards in his career, which is good enough now to put him into seventh place. He passed John Stevens, who played in the 80s and 90s, and he passed him. So now he's in seventh. Don Calhoun, who also played in the 70s and early 80s, has 3,391. So he needs 80 yards to tie Don Calhoun. He'll definitely get that, whether it's this next week or the following week, but he should be able to move into number 6 spot. He has a chance actually to move all the way up to 4th, probably this season. Beginning the season was kind of a question of how long he could hold on to his job, but he's clearly the number 1 running back for the New England Patriots. So I think Ramon Stevenson has a good chance to move up the top 10 list for the New England Patriots as far as rushing yards go and rushing TDs, because he did have a rushing TD as well. He now has 24. He was tied with Don Calhoun for 9th, so he's now in 9th all by himself. Next up for him in 8th place is Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, who played from 2008 to 2011. He's got 29 touchdowns. So Stevenson has 24. He needs 5 more to get to him. That may take him a little while this season to get to, but he's on his way. So quite a few stats for the New England Patriots in this game against the Titans. It's a good team if you want to stack your stats to play against. Now the Miami Dolphins, they lost to the Browns 31-6. Their team is a disaster right now with just off the field stuff, lack of control with the team. I don't know how much longer the coach is going to last there, honestly. It's going to be interesting to see what happens after this year with Tua Tagovailoa and the coaching staff as well. But in this game, Jalen Waddle had a catch in the first half. That was the only catch he had on 4 targets the entire game. Now, the only thing about it was it gave him 339 catches in his career, which broke a tie he had with Devonte Parker at 338. So now Jalen Waddle is in 9th all by himself in the top 10 Miami Dolphins total receptions in a career for the Miami Dolphins. So he's number 9 now by himself. Next up, believe it or not, is Tyreek Hill, who has 340. So he only needs 1 more to pass him, which I'm sure he will do. I do believe Tyreek Hill is done with the Miami Dolphins, and his career may be over too, depending on how serious this injury is. Now, with that 1 catch for 15 yards, it was also enough yardage. It's kind of crazy. 1 catch, and he did enough to tie Duriel Harris for 8th all-time in receiving yards for the Miami Dolphins with 4,534. So he's tied with him for 8th. All he needs is 1 yard next week, and he moves into 8th by himself. He needs a couple hundred yards to pass Devonte Parker for 7th, as well as Tyreek Hill in 6th. They're both up for him. It may take him, I don't know how many weeks, since he only had 15 yards in this last week, so we'll see. But I'm sure he'll do it this season at some point, unless he's injured. Now, if you watch the Denver Broncos game, their win over the Giants 33-32, what a crazy game. All kinds of stats. Denver Broncos had a stat that first team ever to score 33. They scored the most points going into the fourth quarter with a team with 0 points going into the fourth quarter. They scored all 33 of their points fourth quarter to win the game 33-32. I mean, this was a crazy game. The Giants missed 2 extra points, which would have obviously made it more difficult for the Broncos to win. They couldn't have kicked a field goal. They would have had to get a touchdown. Giants were winning this game handily with about 5 minutes to go when Jackson Dart throws an interception. That turned the game completely around. The Broncos were able to come back and win this game by 1 point. But that win does give Sean Payton 1 more win, which puts him now ahead of Gary Kubiak with 22 wins for the Denver Broncos. So next up for him, which is John Ralston, was 34. So he's going to need 12 more wins. I doubt he does it this year. He'd have to win every game to do that. So that's not happening. No, he won't even get it that way this season. So next year, he could get John Ralston, who did that back in the 70s. Now, also for the Denver Broncos, Cortland Sutton had 87 yards in this game. That gives him 5,809 yards in his career with the Denver Broncos, which is good enough now to put him to 7th all-time in receiving yardage with that total. He passed Riley Odoms, who played in the 70s and 80s. Next up for him in 6th place is Steve Watson, who played primarily in the 80s. He's got 6,112, so needs about 300 yards to catch Steve Watson, which he should do this year to move into 6th. He has a chance to move up this list a couple notches. Still a long ways from Rod Smith, who has over 11,000. All right, new game. Indianapolis Colts win another game. Only one loss for the Colts, which is with only one loss, they're the best team record-wise in the AFC right now. But they had a win over the Chargers, 38-24. They have quite a team right now. So with this win, Sean Steichen, the coach, now has 22 wins to tie him with Don McCaffrey. Actually, there's 3 players and Jim Caldwell also, so tied him for 10th. So he's on the top 10 now with that win, but 10 wins to catch Jim Moore to move up another notch. In this game, Michael Pittman had 7 catches on 9 targets for 58 yards and 1 touchdown. In that 58 yards, it gives him 4,821 yards for his career with the Indianapolis Colts as far as receiving yards, which is good enough now to put him into 10th place. Put him in the top 10 with that total, dropping Roger Carr out of that list, who played in the 70s and up to 1981. So Roger Carr is now out. Michael Pittman is in. Next up for him is Dallas Clark, the tight end who played from 2003 to 2011. He's got 4,887. So he only needs like 56 yards to tie him. 66, let's make that. So that could very well happen next week, if not probably the week after, and he'll move into 9th spot. He has a chance probably only to move up to 8th this season. Good going for Michael Pittman. Now, for San Francisco 49ers, Christian McCaffrey. He's been incredible so far. Now, this is an NFL record we're talking about here, but Christian McCaffrey, let me check this real quick. Timeout for this. Let me look at this stat here. Christian McCaffrey, 49ers. Sorry about that. I got to look this stat up because I didn't write it down. So we'll look it up right now while we're sitting here. For the 49ers, here we go. All right, Christian McCaffrey had 7 catches in this game. He also had 72 yards receiving. 72 yards is enough to pass Roger Craig, who's in 7th. So now Christian McCaffrey, all-time among running backs in receiving yards, is now in 7th place with 4,982 yards. So he's now in 7th. Tiki Barber is next with him with 5,183. So he needs another 300 yards to catch Tiki Barber to move into 6th. So that's one stat that he's got, that he's been moving up this list. He's really been crushing it as far as running backs and receiving, in yards, touchdowns, and in receptions. So we'll have to watch him, but he had a great game in that game. Now, moving on to the Los Angeles Rams and their win over the Jacksonville Jaguars, 35-7. I don't know if you remember last week I said I was worried about Matthew Stafford because he can just tear a team apart. He actually didn't have but 182 yards, but he had 5 touchdowns with his 21 receptions. I said the Jaguars might have to have a shootout with him. Well, the only ones that came loaded were the Rams. the Jaguars didn't really do much at all. But Matthew Stafford had 21 completions on 33 attempts, 182 yards. Not many yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 0 sacks. So with those 5 touchdowns, he's got 112 now for the Los Angeles Rams. That gives him enough to bump him ahead of Jared Goff, to put him into 5th all-time in touchdowns passing with 112. He was tied with Jared Goff at 107. Next up for him in 4th place is Norm Van Brocklin with 118. So he needs 6 more for that. Now that may take him a couple of games. Even 5's not going to get him there, but he's on his way to definitely passing Norm Van Brocklin and then later Mark Bulger, who has 122. Norm Van Brocklin, way back in the 1949 to 1957 is when he was a quarterback there. Another record, now this one is an NFL record, but Devonte Adams had 5 catches on 8 targets, only 35 yards, but 3 of the 5 catches were for touchdowns. He's now got 109 receiving touchdowns, which is good enough to break a tie he had for 9th place with Mike Evans. They both had 106 going into this game. Mike Evans didn't have any. He actually was hurt early in the game tonight, so he's out who knows how long. Looks like he might have a concussion, unfortunately for him. But those two were tied at 106 touchdown receptions. Now Devonte Adams has 109. Next up for him is Tony Gonzalez in 8th place with 111. This is all time. So he's been having quite a season as far as touchdown receptions go. Jerry Rice holds the record with 197, so I don't know the chances Devonte Adams has with that, but he keeps racking up 3 at a time. He could have a chance to get up this list quite a ways. All right, that's a look at some of the top 10 players in the games over this weekend. Appreciate you listening. I know this is late, but I wanted to get this out tonight because I got another podcast for Tuesday. Top 10's for Tuesday. We'll look at some of the week 7 leaders in different categories. So that'll be what we do tomorrow on Top 10's for Tuesday. All right. Appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe to this podcast on YouTube. You can go to Just the Stats NFL and find it there, either audio or video versions. I'm still working on the charts. I'm on vacation, which you can tell by my background. So I haven't been able to do charts quite yet for this part of the podcast, but continue to listen. You can also find me on Spotify, Apple, and other podcast apps. If you don't, let me know. You can also email me at justthestatsnfl@gmail.com. So again, I appreciate you listening. And so that is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.